Hello everyone, I am here at the museum of WGPR and we're going to go back in time, history that I didn't know nothing about, but I was glad to see a TV program that made me realize that there was a museum here. So I'm going to have Joe Spencer give you a tour of the museum and I hope you enjoy.
Hello, hi. So glad that you all are able to come and visit with us. My name is Joe Spencer. I'm president of the WGPR Historical Society, and you are here at the William V. Banks Broadcast Museum and Media Center. Before I start taking you into the museum experience, let me tell you why this museum exists. Back in 1970, when times were really different, particularly in the television industry. There weren't a lot of black people in television. There weren't a lot of black people owning television stations. In fact, there were nobody that owned television stations. And a fellow by the name of William V. Banks was a man smart enough and had enough resources and intelligence to put together the first effort to get a black-owned TV station in the United States. And this museum is dedicated to that experience of him putting that station together and the people who worked in it. So come on in, I'm going to show you what's here, okay? Okay, I'd like to start here with telling you about William V. Banks. This is William V. Banks here. And William V. Banks was an attorney. He was a minister. He was an entrepreneur and a real estate developer, and he was also the organizer of a Masonic group called the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons. And so he is the gentleman who, in 1973, began the process of obtaining a license that built a television station. So this is him. This is some pictures about him in his life, some of the people that he dealt with, some of the many organizations, that's some of the certificates and degrees he had. And so quite an interesting man, born in 1903, and he lived until 1986, going to be 83. But he started this effort to build a television station back then in 1973. Well, during that, we'll come over here to this, and this is talking about the people who helped him found the radio station, the television station. It was Dr. Banks, Yulee Boykins, who was the Vice President of Civic Affairs, George White, who was the Vice President of Programming, and Jim Panicus, who was Vice President of Sales. And these four men were the key men and the key persons who organized the station. Yulee Boykins, very specifically, was the person, and this is Yulee Boykins here. Yulee Boykins specifically was the person who had the connection with the Republican administration at the time. The president was Richard Nixon, and he had a relationship with Richard Nixon, and he made a campaign with the president at that time to get the first black-owned television station, to get the license to build a television station. And he was successful. And getting that license, they were able to organize, Dr. Banks, with his resources, able to organize the $3 million that it took to build the station, and that was a lot of money back in 1973, $3 million. He got that money together and built the television station. And this facility where this museum is where the actual studios of the museum existed back in 1975 when the station went up on the air. It took them 2 years to build the station, and started in 1975. So come on down a little further. Just more pictures of Dr. Banks and Mr. Boykins, the key Republican that did it, and Nate McAlpin, one of the key managers here at the station at that time. Okay. Here, going over to here, This is a kiosk devoted to a young lady who was our very first executive director, who was very instrumental in building this station and bringing it into life, Miss Karen Hudson Samuels. She worked here as a news reporter and as the director of our news programming, as well as an anchor person, and then went on to do some other things. But after she retired, she came back, and in 2012, she and I and some other people began to build what is called the WGPR, or the William V. Banks Museum. Here, this television monitor here is a television monitor that is a series of interviews from people who worked at the station, who had a position in building the station and telling their stories and them talking about themselves. So this is a very, very interesting series of reports or interviews, I should say, that help tell the story. There is, for example, Karen Hudson Samuels, when she was still alive. She recently passed in February of 2021, just a few months ago. And she's talking now with Amir Makerson, who ended up being a top news reporter and anchor person on Channel 50 here in Detroit. And there she's talking about their experiences there, talking about the station and their experience here at WGPR. We move on down, we go to this. Now this is a very important board and story here. It's what we call career springboards. And we call it career springboards because WGPR was very, very instrumental in getting a lot of young African Americans their very first jobs in broadcasting, which led to the building of their careers. You see, back in 1973, 1974, 1975, as I said earlier, there were not a lot of African Americans on TV. There was not a lot of African Americans reporting the news. There were not a lot of African Americans behind the scene writing the news stories. Well, you see, that was one of the things that WGPR was able to do. It did two things. One, it gave black people an opportunity to tell their stories, to put their news stories and their images and their vision and their spin on the news as it related to African Americans. And it also got a chance to give these many, many people their first jobs, which led to them having great careers. And this is just a few of the hundreds of people that went through the station during the time that it was on the air. Some of them went on to other television stations. Some of them went on to other careers that was helpful and benefited by their experience here at WGPR. So that's what we call career springboards. Over here, the next panel here talks about the programming. Now, the interesting thing about WGPR was back in 1975, there were only 3 networks available for people to watch TV. It was NBC, ABC, and CBS. And WGPR did not have any network affiliate. It was called an independent television station. And as an independent television station, it was responsible for every hour of programming that was on this television station. So as a result, we produced hundreds of programs weekly in order to fill the hours of broadcast. We had shows like, well, the news, Big City News, Face to Face, which was an interview show talking with important people about key issues. Speaking of sports, Analyzing Sports, Team Profile, a show that dealt with teens and the triumphs of teens. Detroit Crime Alert, which dealt with the crime issue here in the city and exposed different problems in the city and ways that people could protect themselves and so forth. Talk of the Town, a show that dealt with some of the cultural things that went on in the city. Strictly speaking, now this is an example of a great springboard. This young lady, Sean Robinson, went on to become the anchor for Access Hollywood, a nationally syndicated show, but she got her start here at WGPR back in 1981. And so that's her. And then so we had more and more programs, just many, many more programs that were dedicated to Black life, the Black life experience, and things that Black people were interested in. Here you'll find some actual video from some of those programs. There's a whole series of loops here from programs that were actually produced in the television station at that time. That's Doug Morrison, who was one of our very first anchor people here at the station. So there are probably 15 programs that you can see excerpts from the different shows that were produced back in 1975, 85, right on through the period, the 20-year period that the station was on the air. I want to direct your attention over here. This is just a room that we have some of the wardrobe and stuff that was existed back there. Here on the left, we have some of the costumes that one of our anchor people at a dance show we had called The Scene was on the air. That's one of his outfits. The shirts over there were different kinds of shirts that were given away during the time what we call the WGPR swag. This monitor here, this TV monitor, is showing some excerpts from this dance show, The Scene, in which it's actually footage from there. And some of the things, interestingly enough, the purple-looking jacket right there in the corner is a jacket that was given to me by Prince when he was active, and that was that. You'll see Joe on that. That's a Purple Rain jacket that was given to me and is now part of a permanent place in this museum.
Black and white, low and middle
Okay.
class.
So, one of the things that we're also significant about the station was known for its music programming. We had a number of what we call dance shows like this, like The Scene, Contempo, the new dance show, all were hour-long daily dance shows, which had young people from across the country, from across the city and suburbs come in and dance to music, to the popular current music, and then we had many of the entertainers that were popular at the time come in and perform, and we had fashion shows and other kinds of ways of entertaining young people. The interesting thing about it, and that's what this whole area is dedicated to. The Scene here, the first panel of the Scene, the second panel, the tempo, and the third panel, the new dance show. And so this is what this whole area is dedicated to. And the interesting thing about it is if you come on over here, there's also a section dedicated to WGPR FM because we had a sister broadcasting facility, which had an FM television station, WGPR FM 107.5. And the thing that made that very, very, very important is that, first of all, WGPR FM, Dr. William B. Banks bought that station back in 1964, 10 years before he put the TV station on the air. And it was the first black-owned and operated FM radio station in Michigan. So there's another first for Dr. William B. Banks, a very important person. And that's some of the DJs that were on, and just some of the gold records and things that the station received during the time it was, during the time when there was a radio and TV station combination here. Very, very interesting time for Detroit. Very interesting time for many, many people that was involved in the television station at that time. And one of the fun things about being here to the museum is if you wanted to experience what some of these DJs sound like, what their sound was like, pick up this headphone, put it on, push the button, and there you'll get some excerpts from the electrifying Mojo in that case, talking and doing his show, or any one of these different radio personalities that were on the air at that time. So it's just a way to again experience WGPR and FM and Channel 62. Okay, next thing I want to point to you, just to go to the left, right here. This area here is dedicated to one of the most important things about the station is news. We had news shows on the air from the very beginning, and it was very, very important. This
the prime target
is
when
dedicated
the unemployment act
trying to replicate a 1970s, 70s, 80s type living room. It's kind of like the kind of furniture you might have seen back in that day, and the kind of living room set with the bean bags and the phone lamps and so forth, and the old style TV. And that's some of the news programming that was actually on the air back at that time, back in 1970. Here's an excerpt from the actual news show back then. Jerry Blocker, our very first anchorman, who had come to WGPR from the NBC station to run the news operation. And until we had from one of the news programs where he anchored the news as well as he managed it. So that's what this is all about, this area here. And this area here is just talking about some of the key people who were part of the WGPR news operation. As you see, there are any number of people who are really important, who was news anchors or news managers, or the combination of both. Jerry Blocker, Charles Bird. There's Karen Hudson Samuels in her younger years when she was on the news team. And so this is just all segments from the news operation that we had during the years and years of time on the air here in Detroit. Okay, I'd like now to turn you to the other side of this space here. And one of the things is that there's very talented people. For example, this kiosk here is filled with books that people who started their careers here have went on to write books that have been published. Sheila Gregory, which was Dr. Banks's daughter. Amir Mickelson, who was the news anchor who got a start here. Shachette Kemet was a young lady by the name of Joyce Taylor who started her career here. She wrote this book. And then here, Sean Robinson, again, the young lady I talked to you about that was once upon a time worked here, was the anchor for Access Hollywood. That's one of her books. And this book here, The Mental Machine by Electrifying Mojo, one of the most popular radio DJs this city has ever known, a book that he has written. So some very talented people worked at this station. This panel here is here to discuss as a career springboard for people that went on for national success. These are all people who worked here and went beyond Detroit and went on to things in terms of great positions in terms of broadcast and other industries, but got their start here. As I said, Sean Robinson here as a panel lead. Some of the people like Ann Booker went on to be a Ford Motor Company executive. Sharon Cruz went on to do television in San Francisco. Susan Fowler came on to be Spike Lee's attorney. She was one of Spike Lee's attorney. Pat Kirk went on to do television, CNN News, and Fox News Network. James Bearden went on to become an attorney and was the attorney for Don King, who was a top boxing promoter back in the 80s and 90s. And then Pat Harvey, top anchor in Los Angeles as an anchor reporter, anchor woman and anchor reporter at the TV station there in Los Angeles. Terry Owens, a top anchor and news reporter in Baltimore. Denise James, top reporter in Philadelphia. All these people got their start here at WGPR and went on to have great careers. And it can be said that arguably that had not WGPR been in existence, these people may not have attained the successes that they received. Here in this kiosk, this shows the variety of videotapes that we used from the time. When we first started, we were using the great big tapes to put programs on. This big, what we call 2-inch tapes. And then it got smaller and smaller. It went on down to film, down to 3/4 inch, and then finally down to 1/2-inch videotape. So just a little display of how the technology went from big to small as time went on through the years. Now this panel here talks about the people from behind the scenes. You know, every television station And every television program have people behind the scenes, people who operate the cameras, people who write the scripts, people who do the research and make contact with the guests on the shows, people who put the timing together for the shows, people who they put the commercials on in the programs. That's what we call the behind-the-scenes managers and operators. And this was a part of the team that I was a part of. During my time here, I was the executive producer for the station, but I was also the program director. That was me in my very, very young years. I had hair back then, of course, but that was a long time ago, and I was the program director from 1981 to 1994. But the important person here is Miss Tanisha Gregory. Tanisha Gregory, she was Dr. Banks's daughter, and she was the very first female television executive in the entire country when she came on board in 1976. There were no women that were running TV stations anywhere in this country, and she was the very first. And so this panel is dedicated to those people who helped to make Channel 62 during the behind-the-scenes management of the station. That managed the staff, that put together all the things that that any television station might need to operate from a day-to-day perspective. So there you've got people. There's me with Dick Gregory during his visits there, and Marvel's mom. This is the panel with a bunch of the young people who were here, part of our team. Michelle D'Souza was in charge of our traffic department. Very interesting gentleman here. This little gentleman right here, very famous man in his childhood. He was a childhood prodigy by the name of, his name is Frank Robinson, but he was known as Sugar Child Robinson. And he was a pianist. As a five-year-old piano genius and traveled all over the world. Well, he ended up in his later years working with us in our sales department and so forth. Just many, many people. John Grover, the gentleman there in the center with the receding hairline, was our chief engineer and had a lot to do with us continuing to succeed over the years. And of course, there's me with James Brown and Nate McAlpin, who was the executive producer for the station. Once I left and became program director. Shaheen Mesbah, an Arab gentleman who was part of our team. And that was one thing, we did not, although we were a black-owned station, we had all kind of people that worked for the station. All majority African Americans, but very much so, we had African American and Arab and Caucasian staff members. And we had programming of all races as well. So, now the next thing I want to share with you is a panel that goes beyond just WGPR. We thought it appropriate to not only just celebrate WGPR's history, but celebrate some of the many great personalities that came on broadcasting during the years that we were on. And some of these people are still on the air today, and some of them are retired, some of them have moved on, passed on, but they're all great personalities, and we're celebrating them as well in our museum. And this is some of the radio personalities that went on from Detroit and doing great, as well as the great people in print, because this is all media, communicating to our people, having impact on our city here in Detroit. So just many of the greats here. Ed Love, still on the air after 60 years. Yes. Ernie Durham, big DJ back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Van Douglas, interestingly enough, is the father of Doug Morrison, who was our anchorman, our first anchorman. He was on radio back in the 30s and 40s. His son went on to be great. You all know Carmen Harlan, and so many of the other personalities that were great. Donnie Simpson, great radio personality. And, Jim Eagle, drum beat commentator. Very big radio personality. They had a TV show with us called Something Special. So it celebrates the lives of those very talented and interesting people who have major impact on media here in Detroit. If we go around here to the next On the other side of this panel is another panel that has to do with great media in this country and things that have developed since WGPR. You here have a number of people who had significant impact in the world of media. Martha Jean the Queen, which was a radio personality, went on to have her own radio station called WQBH on the air. Don Barton, who had built the Detroit's first cable system called Barton Cable. Big personality. Wendell Cox and Haley Bell, first black radio station, AM radio station in Detroit, WCHB. John Sence, great founder of print, of newspapers, and was owner of the Michigan Chronicle and other newspapers across the country, not just in Detroit, but otherwise. R.J. Watkins got his start here at WGPR, now has his own television station. Byron Allen had some of his first programming to come on our station, and we contribute to his success. He's now one of the biggest television and broadcast moguls in the country. He owns a Weather Channel and any number of channels, as well as syndicated programming. Benjamin Hooks was key to us having our license because he was the first and only African-American Federal Communications Commissioner. And when I say we, when Dr. Banks went to get his license, he was key in working with President Nixon in getting the license. The licenses were a very hard thing to come by. It wasn't anything, they're very limited, and that's why it was important. And here are some other people, and of course you know Robert Johnson from BET, big person in terms of growth of black media. Irvin Magic Johnson has his own network, cable network. Oprah Winfrey, we all know who she is. She has her own network. Andrew Young, who was a friend and worked with Dr. Martin Luther King, went on to be great in media and have his own network, Bounce TV. Harold Meeks worked with us, worked day to day with us here at WGPR, went on to have his own national media company, online company, Tell Us Detroit. He now also has a company called Tell Us USA, which addresses things all across the country. So we go on not just to celebrate WGPR here at this museum, but to celebrate other African Americans who have done well and have added to the voice of African American people. Here we have what we call a timeline. This timeline is just to kind of parallel things that happen important for African Americans during the life of Dr. Banks. Dr. Banks was born in 1903, so the storyline starts here in 1903. It just kind of goes by period in terms of things that were important, all related to Detroit and to the country and what was happening in America for African Americans. As an example, this is Dr. Banks when he was just getting out of law school. This is Dr. Banks when he was ordained as a minister. This is Dr. Banks when he started. This is a symbol of Dr. Banks in terms of the international missions which he started. And then there's just some other things happened. Rosa Parks, 1955, started with the Montgomery boycott. Nat King Cole, first television station, not station, but television show on the air. Big star at that time on NBC. Martin Luther King and Have a Dream speech. So these are just things that were happening as time was marching on. WGPR was marching on. Dr. Banks' life was marching on. This is a picture of Dr. Banks when he got that license back in 1973. Okay, a picture of Coleman Young, the first African-American mayor here in Detroit back in 73. So it's just kind of parallel. And you probably don't remember, but Max Robinson, first black news anchor on a major television station, network television station, and so forth. So it goes on. Now, the thing that's interesting about this also is that not only does it tell the story of things that happened through the years, it's got news articles on different things that you could read. If you were here, you could read about them. And again, just tells more and more of the story of WGPR and black media. And to add to that, here's another fun thing there is that here is a monitor that tells the story of some of these same stories that are going on. So for example, if you push this and push 1968, then the screen would come up and you could, well, in this case, it pumped up 1959. So there, you put on these headphones here and look at the story, and there you get a narrated story of what was going on at that time, you know? So in this case, they're talking about 1959 and talking about what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, so this is there's a whole series of these stories from different time periods that narrated by one of the most outstanding broadcasters that worked here at WGPR, Mr. Gerald McBride. Yeah. Okay, so that would be something that would be very interesting. You could spend hours here going through the various stories they have here. Now, the final panel I want to show you is this panel here. This panel is dedicated to the International Masons. Their more proper name is the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons Incorporated and the Order of Eastern Stars. It's a fraternal organization that was started by, again, Dr. William V. Banks. Dr. Banks, back in 1950, was a part of what was called the Prince Hall Masons. But he and three other guys, including Dr. Turner Hartfield, formed a new organization, a spinoff from the Prince Hall Masons, to become the International Free and Accepted Modern Masons. And this group grew to more than 350,000 memberships across the world. And Dr. Banks was the head of this organization. And he was the head of this organization from its inception back in 1950 all the way until he passed in 1986. Since then, there have been three other leaders, George Matthews, James Dogan, and James Dogan was the man that was more responsible for building this museum because he helped to fund this museum. And now the current leader, Mr. Kenneth Hollowell, who is now the leader of the International Masons, as well as in charge of WGPR FM. And this monitor here has got interviews from all those various people, from Dr. Banks, from Kenneth Hollowell, our current leader, from James Dogan, and it also has on here a film video of President Gerald Ford, who back in 1975, when WGPR went on the air, sent a special message congratulating WGPR for its success as being the very first African-American on television station in the entire country. And he did that, and we broadcast it on the first day that we were on the air. So this is a very interesting monitor to go here and listen to these men who have led this organization, who've been responsible for WGPR. You hear what they have to say about themselves and about Dr. Banks and just about the history. One of the things I find most interesting is an interview they did with Dr. Banks, in which he talks about what his inspiration was for opening this station and investing the millions of dollars that it took to get it involved. In fact, the interesting thing about Dr. Banks, as I said early on, he was a real estate developer, and he owned the Broadway Tower, which is a major skyscraper here in town. He sold that in order to fund his television station. So that's the kind of man. He had a real dedication to trying to get this first black television station on the air. This little panel here, it talks about the museum expansion. Behind these doors here is another studio. It's a studio we used to do our news operation out of. And we are planning and in the operation of raising money now to build what we call a visitor experience where visitors will be able to come in, sit at the news anchor desk, read a television script, and then at the end of it get a video showing what they did, something they can take home and look at it. And it's also going to be used to train young people in the art of television and media production. So that's part of our vision. This here talks about a very significant thing, which is WGPR's place in Michigan history. Being the first black-owned and operated television in the entire United States, the state of Michigan decided that we were worthy of being noted as an outstanding historical place here in Michigan. And this is a replica of the actual panel that's on the exterior of the building out front of the museum, announcing our place as a historic site. And next to that is this, which is an even more important document and plaque, which has dedicated us now and recognized us now as a national historic site, a site that's being dedicated and registered with the National Historic Sites, the National Register of Historic Places in the United States by the Department of Interior. And this is a replication of what is on the front of our building now, which again defines us as a national historic site. So you see, WGPR is a place of history that talks about the history of a single man, of a group of men, and an entire city of people in a whole industry, all to do with African Americans. And we think it's a very worthwhile exhibit for those of you who are able to come to Detroit to come and see, to look at it. I've just given you a brief tour. If you were here, you could spend hours looking at, listening, and watching what this television station has been and what it's meant, and looking at the inspiration it created, and also buying into the vision that we have, because we have a vision that this will be an ongoing institution that will continually recognize the significance of African Americans in media and the significance of African Americans telling their story of what it is to live and be black in America and to be an African American in this world. Thank you. I hope that you will come. We're located in Detroit at 3146 East Jefferson here in Detroit. Thank you. And I might add, before we close out, please donate to our efforts. Of course, it always costs money to operate a place like this. People can come to this museum, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. But we could use your donation. You can go to WGPR Historical Society to make a donation. You can go on PayPal, you can go on Facebook, all those different entities you can go on and find us and donate to us. And any amount will be certainly appreciated. Again, thank you.
All right, man, that was amazing. When I first discovered this, I was like, wow. And I had to come down here and see for myself, you know, in person, even though I was introduced to it from the TV. All right, thanks for watching. I hope everyone enjoyed what they saw and heard. And take care, stay healthy, and above all, be fantabulous.